Welcome to the Executive Alliance podcast. I'm Rebecca Snyder, Executive Director of Executive Alliance. In each episode, alternating hosts Christine Walsh and myself will sit down with accomplished women leaders in Maryland to explore the journeys that shaped them, the challenges they overcame, and the insights they've gained along the way. We'll also tackle the issues that influence women's leadership today, from opportunities for growth and advancement to the systems and barriers that can stand in our way. Through authentic conversations and shared experiences, we're building a community where women learn from one another, support one another, and move forward together. We're glad you're here. Hi, everyone. I am delighted to have Tracy Imm in the studio today. Tracy's a vice president at Rowe Price and a leadership communications and change management professional. Tracy has done so many things in her life, but her focus really is on helping people and organizations move through transformative change. So Tracy, and she also, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but is the host of her own podcast, Brave Girls with Tracy Imm. So always a little pressure when I have a fellow host on the show. But welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited that Executive Alliance has decided to do this podcast. I think it's a great way to showcase the voices of women in our area and talk about the things that are really important to women in the workplace today, as we sort of move through the world that is ever changing, as evidenced by AI everywhere.
Absolutely. Well, and you really deal at that intersection of people and change and sometimes scary change. And we were talking before we started recording that you're sort of a master of reinvention. So your work touches on communications, change, coaching, and of course, women's leadership, I think is a central piece. But when you look at the whole arc and you're looking from within the arc because you're not finished yet. But what's the through line when you share your narrative? What is it?
So I think of myself as a storyteller, and I think that there's a lot of power in stories. And I think that being able to tell a good story helps me in the work that I do today, both at T Row and outside of T Row, because change is everywhere all the time, 24/7, 365. And if people can see themselves inside of the story and they can feel that they're part of the story, that's where it's easier for people to move through change. And so people have to understand where they are and where they're going. So I do think that that's a big part of my role and my gift is being able to tell that story and to engage whoever the stakeholder might be. And so a lot of the roles that I've had, both in corporate and public policy, it's about that stakeholder engagement and understanding your audience and understanding what their pain points are and why they are resisting, and then
Mhm.
making sure that people feel seen and heard throughout, like when you introduce this new way of doing work or things of that nature. And it could be as simple as we're putting in a new time keeping system, right? That or
Mhm.
they go from paper to computers, right? And how they did work day to day today is going to be different tomorrow, and why that's a good thing for them and not just the company. So I would say that a lot of it is around the storytelling aspect and understanding, being really grounded in business principles. Whether it's a nonprofit or it's a for-profit or it's a government agency, everyone is going to go through these changes, especially with the introduction of technology into the workplace.
Mhm. And so were stories always central to you, or did you have kind of an aha moment that you were like, this is the pathway in?
So I've always been a reader. I've always been a writer. Even in elementary school, I wrote a book and put it in my elementary school library. Shout out to Miss Barry for, basically, encouraging me as a writer. I went to poetry camp when I was in middle school. So I've always had sort of this creative side to me, but at the same time, I was always good at math and science, and so I feel like I excel in the right brain activities, but I also understand the left brain. And
Mhm.
so, for example, my undergraduate degree is in communications, but I have a minor in computer science. So I was taking, advanced speech writing and I was taking COBOL at the same time in college, right? And so I always had this interest in technology and data and things of that nature. And so I understand that language, which that's all it really is a different language, right? And
Mm.
X's and O's and how every ones and zeros and how it all gets programmed. And so I understand both. And so I try to feel, I really feel like am my gift is at that intersection between business, tech and data, and people,
Mhm.
right? And so you don't have to be a technical expert to go through a change. You could just be a regular business person or an operations person or a customer service person, right? And I've literally started at the bottom and gone all the way to the top and then, sideways a couple times, right? And so just being adaptable and willing to pivot, I think makes me like, I'm more flexible. Like, and I'm not saying that change isn't hard for me too. Like, sometimes it takes me a while to get my brain wrapped around why is this a good thing, right? So I understand that. I've also taken a ton of courses in like human psychology, organizational development, that's where my sort of passion for leadership comes in, and in particular, women in leadership. I've
Mhm.
often found myself either the youngest person in the room, the only woman in the room, the only person without a technical degree, which I checked that box and got a technical degree. So, no one could say I didn't have a technical degree. Um, and so I'm really passionate around mentoring those people from behind, right? Because all of my mentors were white men
Mhm.
as I was kind of coming up in the corporate world. And so I want to give back. And so I really see the value in human potential and coaching and mentoring people to their highest
Mhm.
potential. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where my love is, my heart.
Mhm. Well, and one of the things I admire most about you as a leader is that, you have like a really strong technical grounding and understanding of, like here's the system and how it needs to go. But oftentimes people in those positions are like, well, and then we're going to slot the people in and we're going to get buy-in and we're going to do this. And it feels like people are just cogs in the machinery, um, like in service to the data. And what I admire most about you is that you take a really human-centered approach
Yeah.
and that, the data is important, but the people are critical as well. And you just approach it with such humanity and grace. And I think also like when I'm thinking about women especially, as they grow and develop through their leadership journeys, the way you coach and the way you mentor is really focused in that way as well. Like you're not just trying to fit someone to be something that they should be in, but you're helping them develop and take hold of those systems. So tell me, like, is that sort of the way this is how I see it from the outside, but does that resonate with you?
It does, and when I work with people, even if it's in a group coaching program or a mastermind, I still view people as individuals and as like snowflakes, right? And so I wanna meet them where they are,
Mhm.
right? And I wanna understand their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their aspirations, and I wanna help them be able to see where they're coming I wanna understand where they're coming from, and I wanna help them get to the 2. So again, it's change, right? It's from to. Like,
Mhm.
where are you today and what got you here, but where would you like to go and where are the gaps and how do you close those gaps and you're going to make mistakes as a leader, but like I come from a place of positive intent when I'm coaching people, and so I always assume positive intent
Mm.
and until proven otherwise, right? And so um I've also worked with people who aren't open to receiving feedback on what it's going to take to get to where they want to go and the gaps that they may have. And if they're not willing to close those gaps or at least make an attempt, then it's very hard to be a mentor and coach to them. But the
Mhm.
people that I've had the most success with are the people that I listen to very deeply. because I wanna understand where they are emotionally, right? And where their thinking is so that then I can kinda sorta direct them. And a lot of my study has been in positive psychology,
Mhm,
and there's definitely something to that. Not what's wrong with people, but what's great about people. What can they really lean into that is their unique gift? And how do they show up as a leader? It could be a group of 4 people they supervise, or it could be 400, right? But how you're showing up is really important,
mhm,
right, in organizations. So, and I do a lot of observation. Like I can read a room. Right? Like I can go into a room and I can see the power dynamics. I can see and a lot of my roles I've had to lead through influence. So
mhm,
I didn't have a direct authority over people, but I leaned into being able to influence that, and that kinda goes back to I'm very relationship oriented, and, I'm very much about people and the relationship that I have with them and the give and take, right? Like, and I always wanna know, "What can I do to help you with what you're trying to achieve?"
mhm,
Because it's karma, it comes back to me. It really
right.
does.
It does well, and one of the things that, I always find so interesting in the idea of change, whether it's your own leadership journey, and I love how you come focused on someone's strengths. The world's set up to make us feel bad, so,
Yes.
leading with strength, I think, is so important, but the process of discernment that it feels like before you can either present yourself out in the world as, sometimes you think of yourself as a brand or sometimes it's, you're just showing up authentically. You have to know who you are.
You do.
And I feel like that's an area that you really are strong in. And that's an area that many people kind of discount because we're so focused on running ahead for the doing and not the
Yes.
discerning of, well, what do I want and why do I want it? And is that really what I want? So, how do you kind of talk people through that discernment? Do you have tools that you like to use?
Yeah, so a lot of it is through inquiry, and I listened to the podcast you did with Krista Crawford, and
Mm,
has great ideas, and I agree with a lot of what she does in her coaching practice. But it's that self-awareness, right? It's not only understanding yourself, but how other people perceive you, and then really dialing into what is it that you need to focus on.
hmm
And so a lot of it is through inquiry, through questioning, through helping people get that clarity, because I agree, you have to be really clear. And I've spent a lot of my own money and time on my professional and personal growth and development. Not everybody is like, and I'm probably to the extreme. I like do every class and read every book and all the podcasts and stuff like that because I believe that I'm just trying to make myself a better human, right?
mm-hmm.
And make the world a better place. Like, my big lofty goal, right, is like this global humanitarian that I want to become, right? And so, how can I step into that every single day in the interactions that I have with people?
Well, and that clarity of purpose, like once you know who you are and what you want to bring to the world, it kind of makes all those other decisions be background noise
Yes.
because you know why you're there, and so you're not running around trying to do things that aren't suited to you.
Yeah, yeah, and I also, and this has happened to me personally, and I've also seen it in some of the people that I've worked with, is um, when something is a little off or there's friction in the system, a lot of times you're not in the right environment or you're not
Mhm,
working for the right person or there's a values conflict, right? And so you sort of do a root cause analysis of why things feel kind of off,
mhm,
right? And then that sometimes leads you to getting more clear and then
mhm,
what you're seeking, right, in your next role or your next organization or your next whatever. And I do think that that helps when you have that clarity and you understand what your own values are. And I know we do that in the Executive Alliance mentoring program. We
right,
take them through that in the very beginning is to get clarity around their values, right? Like what is most important to you from a values perspective, and then making sure that the environment that you're in reflects that back to you,
right.
right?
Well, certainly in that values exercise, I think it's important to recognize that sometimes your values change. It's not like,
They do.
you know, you're tossing out and like, oh, because as you know, we look for the top 5 values.
Mhm.
And at different chapters and stages of one's life, different things are going to bubble up and really be a focus. And so how have your values changed and how have you kind of changed or lived those changing values through some of your stages?
I think it goes back to understanding what season of life you're in.
Mhm,
Also, so that's one piece, right? Is like, what season are you in? Are you in the I'm having babies and, or I'm taking care of parents caregiving stage? Or are you
mhm,
in the I've got the bandwidth to really throw myself into what I'm working on as a professional, right? So understanding the season that you're in, but then also, I think for me, having been in environments where I'm like, something just doesn't feel right and then I realized, oh, it's because this is my value here and this environment doesn't have it. So then I want to make sure that the next thing I go to does is like that's my number one thing I'm looking for.
mhm,
And that may also like highlight, oh, this value really is important to me and I didn't think it was, but it
mhm.
is.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I when we first started doing values with the Executive Alliance program, and I had done values before, but really discerning for me, like self-determination is such an important value.
Yeah.
But the one that actually I had to give myself permission to let rise to the top was the value of beauty, which in my life I have not always counted that as like an actual that's something I want to prioritize in my life.
Right.
Always loved, sort of beauty and ease, but in the chapter that I'm in, those are things that are really important to me to like show up for in some ways and holding that space. Um, and so, but actually, not to ramble, and if you know your values, I'd love to hear them, but I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you spit them out? I have them on my desk right here, so I look at them.
Yeah. Well, your strengths are the same way, right?
Mhm.
Like your strengths
W-
also may
Tell
shift.
me, here's my mug.
Oh, I love it, I love it. Yeah, so, like, your values and like, I would say, like, the core 10 have always been the core 10, right? But then, like, within that, like, for me, I need to be able to trust the people that I work with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, integrity is super, super high on my scale because I wanna not have to be, like, looking over my shoulder or, and there's gonna always be politics wherever you go, and I wanna hold myself to a high standard that I
Mm-hmm.
don't wanna like, what you see is what you get, like, I'm not gonna play games, right? And so it kinda bothers me sometimes when I see lots of gamesmanship. I call them reindeer games, like, when I see reindeer games, I'm like, "That's a lot of reindeer games." And that's distracting people from the actual work that needs to be done,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to get the outcome that we said we wanted to achieve. So, just over time. And also, I think as you age, I think you approach work a little bit differently, especially when you have some really like valuable experiences and achievements behind you. But I do think that every single day you have to kind of show up as a new version of yourself and kind of prove yourself all over again, which can sometimes be exhausting.
Mm-hmm. So, a lot of what we've talked about feels a little bit like, okay, you have a lot of autonomy in your job and you can choose like, well, gosh, there's friction. I don't fit here, so I'll just go somewhere else. But I think especially women maybe in the earlier stages of their careers don't always feel like they have those options. And so how do you have suggestions or how people would navigate when they're feeling stuck? Like, I
Mhm.
can't just go and find another job. Like, maybe I'm here for certain reasons, but they don't feel it's a good fit, or there's change that's coming that they're just uncomfortable with. Like, how do you guide
Yeah.
people through that?
Well, I mean, I kind of always go back to we all have agency and everything is a choice and we have the agency to make decisions, right? And so while you may be in a situation, it could be temporary, right? And
Mhm,
so what can you get out of that experience that like what is supposed to teach you by being in this experience?
mm,
Maybe it's patience. Maybe it's you know, learning something that will like make you a better whatever in your next role, right? And so there's always something to be, and Oprah always talks about this too, right? When things happen to you, it's like there's always something to be learned from the
Mhm,
experience. But I do think we have agency, and I do think that if it's so, so bad, that you can always develop a plan, like an escape plan, which is
mhm,
okay, I can tolerate this. I think it's tolerations and boundaries too, right? Like, you have to have your own boundaries, like, in terms of, like, the number of hours that someone expects you to work, right? And if
mhm,
it's unreasonable, and you have to stand your ground. And then I think also, you have to say, "Okay, well, I'm willing to tolerate this for the next 6 months because we reorg around here every other day," right? So,
mhm,
who I work for today may not be who I work for in 2 weeks, right?
mhm,
And so I'm willing to tolerate it because I believe in the vision and the mission of this overall organization, and I'm bought into it, right?
mhm,
So, but I think it's a personal journey. And I think the other thing, I counsel a lot of people who have been laid off.
mhm.
And then, the first time it happens, you're kind of in shock, and you have to go through the
Sure.
7 stages of grief, right? Especially if you didn't see it coming. And so I think that you have to see the value in what you bring to the table, and not take it personally, because most of these layoffs are not personal. It's a financial thing that the companies are doing, um,
Mhm,
to just get their cost under control.
right. And that makes perfect sense, and it also kind of strikes me that you're not, and everyone knows this intellectually, if even if you don't always know it emotionally, that you're not just your job, and I think you have such an interesting world, like, when I think about you, you have a really demanding job at Rowe Price, but you're also doing so many other things, and I see you as, like, this fully realized person.
Oh, thank you. I think the reason is because I had an episode where I really poured into my job, and my job was my identity, and I had to learn sort of the hard way that I'm a human with, lots of other aspects to my life, and different aspects of my personality. And so I had to learn how to detach from that. And
Mhm,
I also set goals for myself for community involvement, right? And
mhm,
for my creative, like, my podcast was really born out of I love to create content, and I love to talk to people. And someone encouraged me to do a podcast before women were really podcasting. And so I'm super proud of my podcast because this year I'm going to hit 100 episodes. I'm in 54 countries.
congratulations.
I'm in countries where women don't have very many rights. They can't use their voice. And so the fact that my podcast is being listened to by these women around the world gives me, I feel like I'm trying to give them hope and inspiration for their, situation in the country that they live in. And I've been able to meet so many amazing women and feature their stories about their career journeys or the lessons that they've learned that other people can share. So I feel like that fulfills my connector strength, right? Is that
Mhm,
connective I like being in that connective tissue. It comes naturally to me to bring people together. And so I like to affiliate myself with organizations like Executive Alliance and other like-minded women who are about female empowerment. And I love that we have an advocacy aspect, and that we can
right,
influence public policy, and that we can help the state of Maryland become a better state by putting women on boards and commissions.
yeah,
That's important to me. And I love that we are the voice of women in the workplace. Like, I love being part of that.
mhm.
So anything I can do to support those types of endeavors, that's just very important to me.
Well, and I think also, like, translating kind of the woman spirit into action is really important because otherwise, it's not empty empowerment, but it can feel a little like, "Oh, you can do anything." But if you're not actively advocating and supporting women who are making change, I
Yes.
think that there's a disconnect there. And, so I think, I wanted to go back to, you had said one of your purposes is to be a global humanitarian. what draws you to that global stage? And how did you get your podcast in 54 countries? That's like next level.
I think well, it is. I think I started in 2016. There
Mhm,
really I think it was like 1% of podcasters were women. So I think people were hungry for content produced by women. And so I think it was a timing thing.
mhm,
And I think that I kept them short. My podcasts were very short, so you could, and this was back in the day when everybody was commuting, an hour to get to their jobs.
right.
So, it was the perfect length for a commute in or out of the office, right? I think that was part of it. So, I think the length was part of it. I think the timing was part of it. I didn't do any kind of big global, like, promotion,
Mhm,
but so I think it was a timing thing. I did stop the podcast at one point, because I had a health issue, but I've restarted it and I'm really energized by it. And I've taken a different approach,
mhm,
so that it's easier to produce. I put a lot of pressure on myself in the beginning to be consistent every single week. So
mm,
52 episodes. Like I was really consistent with that. And it was a lot of work. I
yeah,
did have assistants. I did have a producer. But I was the one, finding the guests, doing the transcripts, doing the recordings, all that. I have a different person now, who helps. So the lift isn't as heavy, because I learned that I need a team. We call ourselves Team Tracy.
love
And,
that.
we project manage it all, asynchronous using Asana as our tool. And it's worked out really, really well over the last 2 years. But I take a seasonal approach. So I pick
Mm,
a topic or a theme. So I just came off of the Caring from the Heart theme, and I'm getting ready to roll into Smart Money for my next theme. And I'm super excited about that to talk about women and money and just there's 5 million tentacles that come off of that. And so I'm excited to share the guests that I was able to land for that season. And then the season after that, I'm going to do one on health and wellness.
oh, I
So
love that.
I
Yeah,
have a lot of, different topics and experts that I want to bring on the show to share their knowledge, right?
mhm.
I
Well,
also
and
feel like I also feel like I'm a teacher. Like I have
mhm,
this innate desire to teach people. So I think that's kind of where I my come from is and my joy is.
mhm.
It's seeing
No, and I
students have the aha moment.
yeah, well, because you're also an adjunct, or lecturer, what I don't know
I
the
was an
title.
adjunct professor, yeah. So I'm on sabbatical, as they say right
Oh,
now,
lucky
but
you.
yeah, but I've taught over 500 students. I found that, I was hiring people into the workforce and they didn't have the skills, but they had the degree, and I would
Mhm,
spend 2 years training them on things I thought they should have learned in the classroom, so I was like, "I'm gonna go fix that problem," and that was really the driving force for I mean, because you don't make a whole lot of money, so it wasn't about the money, it was about how can I help people be better equipped to enter the workforce, with their degree, right? So that they will be attractive candidates to hiring managers and they can hit the ground running after they get that paper degree, with a portfolio and
mhm,
they can articulate their value proposition to an employer. So
mm,
I'm super proud of some of the accomplishments of some of the people that I've taught who got crystal clear in their undergrad or grad degree, and what they're doing out in the world as, chief marketing officers and agency owners and, everything from A to Z. And a lot of them have come back and said it all started when they were in my classroom. And I was like, theory's great, but like, this is what you need to know how to do.
well, and it for me, that comes back to your storytelling, because if you cannot articulate your own story and
Right.
tell your story to others, no hiring manager is going to dig deep and be like, "Let me figure out your story." They're just like, "That person's chaotic, maybe has some skills, but I can't understand where
Correct.
they would fit into this organization."
Correct.
So, now is it just not just, but is storytelling really the crux of what you're doing, or are there other things that you think young graduates need to what do you think they need to really enter the workforce successfully?
So if they're coming out of college with some kind of a digital marketing or communications or any of those types of degrees, I think you need to be able to speak in front of a group
Mm,
confidently.
mhm.
So I do a lot of that in my classroom is I make them present because I'm like, I'm not going to fire you from the class,
Right.
right? But you're going to be more successful if you have this degree to be able to actually present, look the audience in the eye, have your content organized in a way so that you could be a company spokesperson one day, or you could
Mhm,
be the chief marketing officer, right? And so, because that's such a big part of the role, right, is being able to stand up and kick off a town hall meeting and those types of things. So it's having that presence, right?
mhm,
I definitely feel like you need to be able to write
mhm,
and you need to be able to have critical thinking skills. And I think that's where maybe because this generation has been brought up on computers, they've never not known an iPhone, right? And so, really those critical thinking skills and problem solving, right?
mhm.
Because I just think that's still always going to be really important.
Well, and to be able to think on your feet, it's one
Yes.
thing to say and our world is so asynchronous that, you have that luxury of saying, "Oh, I'll get back to you," or like, "I'm gonna follow up on that email in just a minute," and really craft it if you want to, but when you're out in the real world interacting with people, you
Yeah,
have to be able to spit it out
you
and
do.
interact on at a moment's notice. Um I wanna actually, before we go on, I wanna talk about women in visibility next, but before we do that, it's
Okay.
been on my heart to talk about feedback. So, earlier in our conversation, you were talking about how sometimes it's difficult if someone's not able to accept feedback, and I wanted to kinda dig into that a little bit on what you think holds people back from accepting feedback. Like, I'm thinking, is it they're very positional in their approach to their self-awareness? Is it fear-based? Like, what do you think holds people back from really accepting feedback?
I think it's a couple things. I think, first of all, people aren't very good at giving feedback.
Mm,
You may have had an experience where it wasn't so much the message, it was the way it was delivered. And so I
mhm,
think there's an actual art to giving feedback and receiving feedback. And I think sometimes people um, are maybe insensitive when they give people feedback. So I think you may
mhm,
have had a bad experience getting feedback. So therefore, you're kind of like an injured dog, right?
right,
So I think that's part of it. I think sometimes it is the lack of self awareness, or, I've noticed that some people have a high need to be right all the time.
mhm,
I have a couple of people that they have a high need for visibility and like recognition, so it kind of depends on, and so you have to kind of look at yourself a little bit, like what is it about you that makes you resistant to that feedback, right? And also, I think, I know I'm very empathetic, so I'm super, super sensitive, right? And so I now recognize that, um, that's where I'm coming from, right? I'm already too sensitive, right? So I need to toughen up a little bit and
mhm,
really receive it and then digest it. Some people also need more time to
mhm,
process it. Like, you can't just, like, vomit the feedback on somebody because sometimes they you have to kind of give them the context and then if they're supposed to do something with it, like so I think it's an art, and I think that's also why people avoid crucial conversations. Because
mhm,
I do a lot of coaching in that with people when they're in supervision, like getting over their fear of having a hard conversation with
mhm,
their person, and, once you kinda learn how to do it, it becomes easier and you get more confident. So a lot of times people are very avoidant in giving feedback.
mhm. Until it
So
becomes this huge thing that you can't avoid,
yes,
and then you're like,
yes.
"And I'm gonna bring stuff back from 6 months ago because
Oh,
it's been weighing
yeah.
on me."
That's like a terrible plan. Like, it's better to make and the other thing I teach people is the best thing to do when you hire and onboard somebody onto your team is to share with them a written document of your expectations. Somebody
Mhm,
did that with me, and I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And then anytime you gave me feedback, he would specifically point back to where I missed one of his expectations, and he was disappointed, right? And I never wanted to
mhm,
disappoint him, right? But and he said to me, he's like, if you, it was before I became a supervisor. He said, when you become a supervisor, he goes, this will be and I came up with my own expectations. I didn't just use his, but it was like 10 items, right? And I used to have so I would orient the person to the team and I would say, put pin this in your at your desk on your little cork board so that it's always in front of you so that you can run through my expectations, and as you're doing things and you're making decisions, just see if it aligns with my expectations, and then
Mhm.
know that I'm going to come back to you with some very specific feedback on the specific expectation that you missed. So, for example, I was the supervisor of a department that supported other departments. And
Mhm.
so internal customer service was really important to me and building those relationships with those other internal people that we were working with. And that
Right.
was like one of my first things. And then like things would go sideways. And I was like, again, it's really important that you don't have to like the person that you're supporting, but you do have to have a good customer service orientation.
Right.
Right.
Well, and it for me, like, that all comes back to that clarity, and I love that if you're a supervisor, getting clear about your expectations, and I think, it is not easy to be a supervisor, and oftentimes you become a supervisor because 'cause you're really good at doing the work,
100%. It happens
but
all the
no one
time.
tells you how to be a supervisor.
100%.
And so you kinda go in all, like, excited, "I'm gonna do this." But if you're not clear about what you need to do and what you're expecting from other people, like, I think that process of even creating those expectations probably snaps things into clarity for the supervisor themselves.
100%. But I've also seen people, when there's sort of a kerfuffle going on over here, and it would be exactly what you said, like the person was super smart software engineer, technical, techie, and they decided to put them in charge of all the software engineers. Well, to be a software engineer and to lead a team of software engineers is two different skill sets.
Mhm,
And so I've seen this a lot where the team is failing because they don't have the right person leading. Like, you're better off having a leader that doesn't even know how to do programming, but they know how to lead a team to take charge,
mhm,
right? And then put this person in and there's even jobs out there where it's like the technical expert. They still make pretty good money, but they're an individual contributor. And
mhm,
they're more the technical SME on big complicated
mhm.
projects, because it's two different skill sets.
So how do you like, if you're now that technical supervisor that really, is you wanna do it, but you're not sure how do you start that journey? I mean, is
I think
there
there's leadership development programs that you can do inside companies and outside, like executive alliances,
Mhm,
right? Like if you have aspirations to lead a team or to have a higher position or whatever, but just understand that it's a different skill set, right?
mhm.
And it's a people-centric skill set.
Yeah.
Those
No,
soft skills, right? That are going to make you successful.
right. So I want to shift into building your visibility as a female leader. And I think, you've written books, you are a keynote speaker, you have your podcast. Um, I wanted to start, though, back in elementary school with author confidence. So I want to know what that book was that is in your elementary school library and what that's about. And, how you kept that confidence to put yourself out there in written format like that throughout your arc. But what's in the library?
Oh, in the library with Miss Berry, at Hickory Elementary School. So it's really funny. It was before rollerblading was a thing. So I wrote this book about this girl who she got a gift at Christmas time, and it was rollerblades. It was
Oh.
skates that were all like it wasn't like the four
Mhm.
like
It wasn't
wheels.
roller skates, yep.
Yeah, it wasn't roller skates, so I had this vision that she got this Christmas present, and she wanted to learn how to use them, and so it was her with her rollerblades skating around the neighborhood.
I
And
love
it's so
that.
funny because when rollerblades came out, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that was what my book was about."
They stole my idea.
I was like, "Yeah, exactly." I was like, "I have foreshadowed, like, the rollerblades were coming because they didn't exist back then." So, yeah, it was about this little girl who got rollerblades for Christmas, and she learned how to rollerblade through her neighborhood. Isn't that
Well, and
funny?
so I admire 3rd grade Tracy or elementary school Tracy who, had a revolutionary idea, number 1, but just kind of the follow through and the courage to go to your librarian and, like, make that happen. So, I mean, it would just never I don't think it's in my conception of myself to be like, "Oh, I'm gonna spit out a book no matter what age I am." And you've
Mhm.
done it a couple times. So, what do you think like, what's pulling you towards writing? How does that work for you?
Well, next so back then, I just like I said, I went to poetry camp, I like to write, like, it was that was just very appealing to me. And then, you know, I really thought when I went to college, I wanted to be an on-air sports broadcaster. Clearly, that didn't happen, and that was where I had a column in the newspaper in college.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh, yeah, and, it's funny because the person at the college who I report to, he was the editor, and he reminded me of that, and I was like, "I totally forgot. I worked for you back then."
That's so funny.
But yeah,
Did
I
you
had a
go to
column at
McDaniel College?
what's that?
Did you go
McDaniel.
to McDaniel?
Yeah, I went to
Okay.
McDaniel. Yeah, yeah, my part it was my he was my film partner. I picked him as my partner because he was really good, and he went to cinema school out in LA and, had all kinds of Hollywood credits and stuff, and then came back and created the cinema program there.
Mm,
And we've stayed friends ever since, but, yeah, so I've always, um there is a piece, though, as a writer where you are vulnerable and you have to get over that fear of the visibility. So, like my second book, I'm only now starting to promote it, but I wrote it more as like a healing journey for me of all these different shameful stories, very
mhm,
Brene Brownish.
uh-huh,
And so I'm only now promoting it. I wrote it in 2018, but I've given a couple talks with different women's groups about it and everything, and everyone has shame and it's sort of
mhm,
like a universal like emotion. But yeah, I think you just kinda have to get over it and be like, "This is part of my service to the world is to use this gift that I have." But now I get these downloads. It's the craziest thing. I'll be taking a shower and all of a sudden I'll get this download like, "You need to write a self-help book," or like, "You need to
mm,
write a blog," or like and so it's just things come to me, and now what I use is I use my voice app, and I'll just like, I could be in the car and I'll get this download that something needs to come out, and I don't know where it's coming from, God, source, I don't know, and I just speak it into my voice memo and get AI to transcribe it, and then that may become a chapter of something that I'm writing.
mm. Now, so I wanna go into the, idea of shame, and, personally, I feel like fear is one of the most powerful emotions of all,
It
but it
is.
sounds like shame, which feelings of shame, I don't know if we would count that necessarily as an emotion, but it's certainly a powerful force, and I think, it's important, though, because so often we'd like to gloss over, that discomfort, like, "Oh, I'm embarrassed by this.
Right.
So, what is it for you that is important about bringing those stories to light?
Well, I think we all have the human experience, and sometimes we forget that, and we think we're the only one, like, experiencing whatever that emotion is, and so I think that, people feel seen when they realize it's not just them. And,
Mhm,
like, Dr. David Hawkins, he did a lot of work around the sort of the energetic, vibration of different emotions. There's, like, the scale, and, like,
mhm,
anything below the acceptance line, they're, like, the low vibe feelings, and so I write about a lot of those that I've had, but then, like, my one coach taught me that, you have to like, if something's bothering you, you have to get to acceptance as fast as you can because then that tips you on the higher vibration,
mhm,
emotions like love and peace and joy and hope and all those, and so, you have to if something's bothering you or, you're really angry at someone, which is a low vibe, you have to just accept it is what it is and then move on, even though it might like you don't want to swirl in these low vibe emotions. And so I always say, how can I get to acceptance as quick as possible? Because then I can transform, right? Again,
mhm,
change, right? How can I change my situation or my like downward spiral?
mhm,
And so that's why I write about a lot of those emotions, not
mhm,
because I kinda wanna expose them and let people know that it's okay, and we all kinda can get we're gonna have our moments, right? We're gonna be
mhm,
down there. But you gotta get out of it is the issue, right?
mhm.
As quick as possible.
Right. Well, and getting to like true acceptance it's a little bit of a journey. It's not just like,
Oh,
okay, I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to
no, it's
suffer.
hard. It's hard.
So how do you get to acceptance? I know writing's a big piece of it for you, but are there
So
other
I'm a big meditator,
Mhm,
so I meditate every day, and that gives me some clarity. I've been doing these meditations on Insight Timer that are based in Stoic philosophy, which I didn't
mm,
know much about the Stoics.
mhm,
And the person that I is one of my executives at T Rowe said that she had been really diving into the writings of the Stoics, and I was like, "That's kind of a weird thing." And then I was like I went down the whole rabbit hole of like, "Well, maybe I should do that," right? And now that I think about her, she is very stoic.
mhm,
She is and so she has embraced a lot of the Stoic, teachings or whatever from, like, way back
mhm,
when, but these meditations and making sure that I have a daily meditation practice has really helped me, and it's also helped me regulate my nervous system so that, I don't have, like, big emotional, like, roller coasters. Because I think it's important when you're a leader that you do have to, make sure that your vessel is, as even as possible, because people can pick up on that energy if you're not
right.
your emotions aren't regulated.
Well, and everyone's bringing their emotions and their mess to you, and if
They
you
sure
don't have
are.
a handle on yourself,
Correct.
you can't hold it you can't hold the you
The
can't hold
space.
space for other people.
Correct.
Um, actually, for people who don't know a lot about Stoic philosophy, do you wanna, give just a little 30-second spiel on enduring and accepting?
Um, I don't know that I can do that. Um, I would just say that, there are many books about Stoicism that are out there. Marcus Aurelius was the big guy back in the
Mhm,
day. There's a guy, Ryan, and he has a bookstore in Texas, and he has a podcast and everything. And I follow him. I can't think of his name now, but he kind of takes sort of these ancient tablet type teachings and he brings it forward into 2026 so that you
mhm,
understand it.
yeah.
But
Well, and one of the things that I've always admired about the Stoics is sort of that dispassionate sort of evaluation of a situation, and I
yeah,
think when you
detachment. Yeah, it's like the detachment piece.
and when you were talking about receiving feedback, sort of separating out the emotional nuances and looking at something, with that rational side of your head and, like, examining it, and which I think that's a very meditative process where,
It is.
you're not reacting, you're observing, the thought is coming through. I look at it, I set it aside, and that's a very stoical
It is.
piece,
It is.
and that creates some resilience because "Oh, okay, like, I can hear hard things. I can look at this, and I can separate it from my immediate reaction."
Correct.
Um so I can see how that would be something that's really helpful. Um, and so but let's pop back to visibility, and I know we're near our end of the time,
Okay.
but you are so, your speaking engagements, all the other things that you're doing, what was it difficult for you to push yourself to be as visible as you are, or did
In the
that kind of
beginning. No,
that
in the beginning
teaching
it
part
was.
come naturally?
No, I mean, in the beginning it was. Now, um, I do it I do it for the audience, not for myself. Like I'm not trying to be self-promotional. I'm trying to give the wisdom that I've gained in my lifetime as a gift to others to
Mhm,
hopefully inspire and motivate them to reach their highest potential, right? And so in the beginning it was, but I would say now it's not because it's just who I am. And I think I've been building that muscle over the years. Probably when I first wrote my first book. I was doing a lot of free speaking at that time because I was very passionate about getting these students ready for the job market, right?
mhm,
And that was really the inspiration was I had given a talk at Towson to like 200 students about my career and my advice. And someone said, you should turn this into a book because it would
mm,
be helpful to more students. So that's really was the genesis of it. And then I just through working with different mentors and coaches, they were just really encouraging me to put my content out there, and to really use it, from sort of like I didn't even really think I had a personal brand. And someone was
Mhm.
like, "Well, you have a personal brand." And I was like, "What is that?" Like,
Who
really?
knew?
Like, yeah, who knew, right? But I would say, I get to like, I just am in flow state when I'm writing or
Mhm.
creating some kind of piece of content, whether it's a podcast or doing the research for the podcast or whatever. So, that just gives me a lot of creative energy, right?
Mm.
And so, that's just kind of where I am. And I hope to be able to influence again. That's a skill.
Mhm.
Influences other people on their journeys, right? And I take
Right.
interest in where they end up and where they go. And like I try to follow up with a lot of the mentees from the Executive Alliance
Yeah.
program years later to just be like, and where are you now? And what are you doing? And, you know.
Well, those connections do stay with you, and you never know sort of
Mhm.
the connection or the impact that you have on someone. So I love that you're always following up. So when you're actually, I feel like we're in a snapshot and you're in time for you. So what's stirring next for you? You're always in a process of reinvention and change. What's
Yeah,
coming up?
yeah. So my big focus right now is I'm working on a book proposal with a book coach, to find a traditional publisher for a women's leadership book,
Mm,
for the women in the workforce today, because some of my experience is not relevant anymore, just because of where we are in the world. And so I really want to have some kind of a body of work that I can share, that could be sort of something that, if you decide to go down the corporate path, which was my path, just some of the things that I want to share with you as a woman coming up through the ranks in the world today, to help you, in your personal and professional growth and development. So, my proposal is really thick and really full, but, like, a lot of that visibility work that I've done over the last couple years, she had encouraged me to do that because traditional publishers wanna see that you have a platform and that you have an
mhm,
audience, right? And so I've been very intentional about that in anticipation of the book proposal,
mhm.
which I hope to get, finished, by this year so that we
Exciting.
can shop it. Yeah, but
Mhm.
she seems to think she's very connected in the literary world with agents, and she seems to think that, there's a market for it, and, I've written a couple of the chapters already because they wanna see sample chapters. So, yeah, so that's what I'm working on.
I love that. So then, in closing, what are the leadership tips you hope women coming up today are going to learn from you?
I think the most important thing is to be authentic, and relatable, and also have that clarity around what it is that you want and kind of going for it. Because right now, with the way that work is structured and the world is much more global, there's so
Mhm.
many opportunities.
Yeah.
Whether you want to be a fractional type of employee or contractual employee and have your own little business with a bunch of clients, or you want to be in-house, like there's always going to be a need for talent. And part of the research I did for my podcast for this series is, women now outpace men in every level of higher education. So we get more bachelor's degrees, more master's degrees, more PhDs, and more law degrees. So I think we've all gone down and we've checked all the boxes, gotten all the certificates, whatever it is that you need for your particular functional area of expertise. And so I think it's time to, just step into it and, offer that up as value add to corporations
Yeah.
globally.
Now's the time for action.
It
We've got
really
all the
is.
boxes and now, there's that pipeline coming in. So I'm
Right.
here for it. Super excited to see your book come out. And this was such a great conversation, Tracy. I always love talking to you. So thank you for coming on the show.
Right back at you, Rebecca. I always love talking to you too. I think we're kindred spirits.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Executive Alliance podcast. We hope today's conversation inspired you, challenged you, and reminded you that leadership is a journey best traveled together. Executive Alliance is a catalyst for women leaders in Maryland. We believe in advancing women's representation at the highest levels of leadership in business, civic organizations, and government. To learn more about our programs, events, and membership opportunities, visit executivealliance.org. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it with a colleague, and leave a review. It helps us continue to amplify the voices, experiences, and impact of women leaders. Until next time, remember that every woman has something to teach and something to learn, something to offer and something to receive. When we recognize the value and potential in one another, we become stronger leaders, stronger organizations, and a stronger community. Keep reaching forward, reaching back, and bringing more women into the light.